Does everyone have my slides and can hear me?
Yes, the people from Michigan are quite upset.
There you have it. Well, and I did my best to try to be provocative, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to live up to our first session. I'll do my best though. So I'm going to talk to you about what sounds like a little bit of a dry topic, but I think actually has I hope some insights for folks, and that's the exponential value of linked data and especially transactional data. So I want to create, since I'm economist, I like simple models. I want to create a model where we think about a data set, which between its sort of determinant variables and its outcome variables, you could answer 100 questions with. And then I want to think, well, we start with that data set and we add a second data set, then we can, but they're separate from each other. Now we can, instead of answering 100 questions, we can answer 200 questions. And if we go out and we add a third data set, we can answer 300 questions. But then I want to think about, well, what happens if we link these data sets? We don't just treat them as three separate data sets, but we link them. And the that linkage allows us to sort of take X variables from one and analyze Y variables from another and flip variables as dependent variables and independent variables and so forth. So again, if we only have one data set, we can answer 100 questions. But now, if we have two data sets, we can't answer 200 questions. We can crisscross them and we can answer maybe 10,000 questions. And if we have all three data sets together, we have the potential to answer 1,000,000 questions. I mean, this may be not perfectly exponential, but you get the idea, I think, that linking data sets unleashes tremendous potential. So in the case of innovation, I think of, and we can label them slightly differently, and I know people will refer to them slightly differently, but I think we can think of there being as three broad classes of data. One set of data are what I'm referring to as bibliometrics. They're the publications, as Andy's going to talk about, the patents and citations and grant records and so forth. The second are survey data. And Wen Ying, I'm thinking, is going to be talking to us a lot about that. And there are certain things that it's just hard to get from other sources of data. It's just much easier to go. I mean, maybe you simply can't, or it's just hard to get from without asking someone. And then the third set of data are going to be transactional data. And these are data on payments, especially to people. Um, and so I want to make a case for why transactional data are so important. And I think there are two reasons for that, that are not unique to innovation, but particular about innovation. And so the first one is that among economically interesting activities, people and the teams they're organized into are more important for innovation than almost any other economically interesting activity. So what I mean by that is, when I buy a new car, I care that someone installed the brakes properly. But due to the modern production line, all that matters is that the person who did that was trained to do it and had the background and did it successfully. The specific identity of that person, their background, how they trained, what their identity is, isn't nearly as critical. And that's sort of the whole point of a production line, right? But that's not the case for innovations. We actually think that, advances in women's health come from women studying biomedical research. We think that issues that relate to underrepresentation come from members of underrepresented groups disproportionately studying innovations, that people bring unique perspectives to these problems. And so it's really critical to get at who's involved in this innovation process and how they're organized. The second thing, and this goes back to Robert Oppenheimer, is that we think that innovations are wrapped up in people, that ideas get transmitted by people connecting with each other. And so it's very valuable to be able to trace ideas and trace people as they move around the economy. So, as has been raised, the Umetrics initiative has been our attempt to do these things. It's the back end of payments on sponsored projects at 72 campuses. It allows us to identify the entire teams of people who are working on projects And we think of, oh well, let's look at the authors and on articles and the inventors on patents, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg that's popping up above the surface. There are all those people, all the staff, all the trainees beneath the surface who may not get identified and recognized. So this is allowing us to identify all those people and how they're organized into teams, and then track researchers as they move through and into the economy. So here's a
You've got
schematic.
one more minute.
Great, of our data architecture. I'm going to go past this in the interest of time. I'm going to try to suggest to you that all of these data elements, when they get combined, allow us to track entire careers, provide visibility into different portions of people's careers. And I think these data have tremendous value also for understanding underrepresentation and intersectionality. Um, in the case of underrepresentation, in both cases, we're trying to understand small groups that are underrepresented by definition. And so having population scale data is very valuable. And transactional data and linked data are very scalable, high fixed cost, but low marginal cost. And it also has the potential for us to analyze what research people do and then understand what businesses that knowledge is valuable for. So let me just conclude by suggesting that we all link data, and especially transactional data.